Hello, welcome to the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. You've come to the right place to tune in and participate with your comments and questions. Love is the greatest healer of all, but sometimes, in order to change our emotions, we must take action in other spheres of our lives. We speak with experts in alternative and complementary health fields and hope you will benefit in some small or great way. Remember, you are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be.
Good day, everyone, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. You have arrived at the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. We are in the month of June, where I understand it's sweltering in many parts of the world. 44 degrees Celsius is 112 degrees Fahrenheit. Can you imagine? Yes, climate change has changed the world, and the glaciers are melting. But today, we're going to give you tips and hints on how to self-care with use of homeopathy during the summer months. We have our special guest. We're very honored to have Jennie French, and check her out on Facebook because she's a powerhouse there. She's a classical homeopath, holistic coach and mentor, and her mission since 1992 has been guided by her dedication to healing and to seeing autism reversed worldwide. And I applaud her for that. And she's also a media star, has been on with Gary Knoll, who I listen to almost every single day. He is incredible. And you were also on other media venues. I forgot what it was right now, but you'll film. Oh, Autism Spectrum Disorder, PBS television in Chappaqua, New York in 2003. So she's well versed in teaching, and she told me that she actually educates each of her clients in self-care so that they know what to do if she's on vacation or something, which is incredible. Since 1993 to 2014, Jennie has cared for 19,000 holistic consultations. That's a lot as far as I'm concerned.
That's a lot.
And that's a lot. And she has so many stories. I could just let her talk about all of them, and you will be amazed that many of them are miraculous healings. And on Homeopathy World Community, you will learn also about her extensive homeopathic education with George Vithulkas, International Academy of Classical Homeopathy, Dr. Vegas, Paul Herskew, Laura Kalinas, and many, many others. And she also has been widely spoken lecturer. We are ready to get started, and we also have with us Dr. Deepak Sharma of the Orbits Clinics in New Delhi, India, who might ring in with something about that summer heat. So there will be, Jennie wanted to make sure there will be a handout after the program of some of the notes, and stay tuned for more information. Okay, Jennie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very excited to be talking to you today.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I'm very excited to be here, and I guess I'll just jump right in.
Right.
So one of my pet peeves in all lectures is that if too much time gets taken up with history and background and all that. So I'm going to be brief, but I think you should know, listeners out there and viewers, that homeopathy is the second most common healing modality in the world. It's estimated that 500 million people use homeopathy on a daily basis. And in fact, in America, we had 27 teaching hospitals in and around the New York area 100 years ago. There's only one doctor in all of Washington, D.C. with a monument in his honor. And that's Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, the The monument was recently rededicated, which means full color guard, etc. And, he's recognized by our government as a great healer. And yet, homeopathy is treated a lot like a placebo often. Oh, you use that stuff, that witchcraft stuff. But it's not. It's another bit of history of America is that the epidemics in the 1919s, which was cholera, scarlet fever, tuberculosis is in there somewhere too, that swept across America, and like the Spanish flu, which these diseases threatened to wipe out America. 15 million people died, I believe, of the Spanish flu worldwide. But what stopped those epidemics was that the homeopaths taught the allopaths, the regular doctors, how to recognize, for instance, in cholera, the three main remedies that would heal the problem, that would end the cholera epidemic. And that's how they ended all three epidemics, and that's why there's a monument to him in Washington, D.C. And you should see it. It's beautiful. It's stained glass and stone. So homeopathy isn't some happy purple feather that you're going to wave over somebody. It is a miraculous healing, a deep healing technique. But the wonderful thing is that as a beginner, if you are a beginner, you can start right out using homeopathy today. You could hop down to your drugstore, because most likely they'll carry these little blue tubes, and get yourself a tube of arnica and start. So it's like stepping into a journey of a 1,000 miles. You take that first step, and what opens out in front of you is miraculous. So I'm going to tell you about a few remedies for the summer. I've got to look down to do this, because this is what the handout is going to be. You'll get the same thing. Now, dosing.
And I'm very excited that you're going to talk about dosing. That's going to be great, and also remedy potencies.
Yes,
so.
I was just going to get to that. So dosing is very important to understand. And as a beginner, you'll want to work low, which means they're measured in the C's, the M's, X's. These are Roman numerals. So X is 10, C is 100, M is 1,000, CM, and so forth. We have these. And within each of these groups, we have, in Europe, you can get 1 to 100. So 1X, 2X, 3X, 4X, 5. Or 1C, 2C, 3C, 4C. We're limited. We can get 6X, 6C, 30C, 15C, 200C, 1M, 10M. And then you can get the 50,000 CMs. That's when you're working with little pellets. And Dr. Sharma will, maybe talk about liquid dosing, because that's another thing altogether. I use a bit of liquid dosing, but we'll get to that. So,
did we freeze?
The which?
Oh, you want to hit your video again?
Video.
Yep.
Did it go on?
You can still talk.
Oh, okay.
You're doing great. Yeah, you're back with us.
Oh, good. I am back. So, when would you use what? You walk into a store and you see this display of blue tubes, which is what you're going to find in America most likely, and all these numbers and names. That's in Latin. What does it mean? So know right away that you need a little book, and a lot of stores give you little books. And they tell you what the remedies do, and they tell you, what potencies are available. So if you have, let's say, a very weak person, or a very young person, a newborn, a puppy or a human, doesn't matter. You want to work low. You want to work with something that's very gentle. So you would probably go into a 15C. As the person gets stronger and older and more developed, you go higher. Or also as the situation calls for it, you might go higher. For instance, in big trauma, you want a high potency, as high as you think you can give. So we have these 10 M's, which is 1,000 to the 10th power. Anyhow, they're very strong, and they're very good for post-surgical work or trauma in a big accident. And so even if I had a newborn baby, I would go quite high. I might go to, in a trauma, to as much as a 1M. So learning the potencies in this way, it sounds sort of confusing. I've written out a way that you can, use as a guide. But it's also very much a learning process. And truly practice with what you're doing makes perfect. The nice thing about homeopathy is that if you get the wrong remedy, nothing happens. If you get the right remedy, you get better. So whereas with medicine, conventional medicine, we might have the wrong remedy and really make ourselves sick. That's not going to happen in homeopathy. Our biggest fear is that other things will stop the homeopathics. That's called antidoting. And that's our biggest fear, is not what damage the remedy will do, but what damage will be done if the remedy gets stopped. And by stopped, I mean, I'm sure that you've had antibiotics and your doctor has said, okay, whatever you do, don't have any alcohol. Why? Because that will stop the antibiotic. Well, in the same way, homeopathy can be stopped by very strong smells, such as mint. Or if you're in a hospital, there's a lot of very strong smells there. So we take precautions against antidoting. That's my biggest fear with homeopathy, not that you'll get sick from it. So you have a certain amount of safety to practice and start small. Don't take on some, disaster case and go into a hospital or try and do anything like that. We want you to learn about bug bites and burns and, tricks, things to do. So 15C would be for young, very old, very weak people. 30C is what most people would be using. And that's what you'll find most frequently in the drugstores and pharmacies and health food stores. 200C starts to get intense. Now you're working on not only the physical body, but now you're starting to work a little bit on the emotional body. 1M, right, is even more so. Now we're into the emotional body and the intellectual body. Well, you must be saying, what is she talking about? Healing the intellectual body or healing the emotional body. Well, for instance, when you have a car accident, you not only have physical injuries, most likely bruises, bumps at least, but you've now been shocked. And that shock doesn't just go away. Ask anybody who's been through trauma. You could even be getting shivers hours later. You could go into shock. So, at that time, you can actually, as a beginner, you can actually do something to help a person, but you want to go high. So you want to go into the intellectual emotional body with a 1M or a 10M. And it will also help on the physical body too. So I explained this, there's 1M and then 10M. And for the most part, as a beginner, you would be using, and I'm assuming there's a lot of beginners out there, you'd be working 15C, 30C, like that. And that's plenty. But I put down the other information for you just to know. And I also gave you a list of antidoters, things that stop the homeopathics, because we want to do that.
And to obtain some of these homeopathic remedies, for instance, it's easy to go to the natural health food store and get a 6C or 30C. They typically don't carry the 200 or 1M. Right. You can order online a kit.
Yes.
Like this is a 50 remedy kit with 200C in it. And this, I was really fascinated to learn that this is something that you might recommend to your clients, that they do have such a high potency level. And also you were telling me that they have them 1M, 10M, even in your regular local pharmacy there where you live, which that was very much of a surprise to me.
Well, one of the ways that I got to work on 19,000 clients was I was the homeopath for a pharmacy, a conventional 40-year, pharmacy of a little town in Westchester. And I got a lot of practice. And so I started stocking the stronger remedies, potencies, and homeopaths heard about it. And they were very grateful because you can get remedies off of Amazon.com. You can call a phone number 1-800-ARNICA-3. Debbie, do you supply remedies?
No, I don't.
Okay, so you can get them in drugstores, health food stores, but also the drugstore can order specific dosages for you. Mm-hmm. You can go online to, actually, you want to be a little careful because you can order remedies from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if I couldn't tell you which farm.
From Helios and Boron and Ludes and many others, they are available for the general public and for homeopaths.
Yes, and those are all very reputable names. So don't go for the biggest deal. Go for the well-known name. Boiron is the most common blue tube.
And Washington Labs, there are many.
Jenny,
Washington Labs are back in existence?
Yes, Dr. Sharma.
Here we have a question in the chat by
Oh,
Ziza. What is the highest potency you can get in US?
what is the highest potency you can get in the United States? Well, we can order 50M and
I was going to say 50M.
yeah.
And that I have that in arnica. Yeah, and that's right. We did. We brought it in for coma. 50M arnica.
Is there somebody calling in? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, we have, MM. Do we have MM? I think we do. We do have
Yeah.
MM. Yes, I think we do have it. So
And
whatever is available. Who is calling? Somebody's calling in today. Yeah, you have a question. Okay, take a step away from the computer so you can hear the telephone call and not an echo.
Me?
No, not you. You're okay. Somebody's calling in, and we're trying to find out who is calling and if they have a comment or question.
It's Christina Chambreau, and I don't have a question. I just called in to listen.
Oh, okay. You just called in to listen. Okay. Well, if you
Hi,
have anything you
Christina.
want to let us know, Christina, we're talking about summer remedies and, oh.
Do you want to tell your listeners who Christina is?
Oh, Dr. Christina Chambreau. I've been doing about 4 years of blog talk radio shows with her. She's a homeopathic veterinarian. And so if she has anything to do about also protecting your pets during the summer heat
Good idea.
or the summer at all, probably getting thorns or stickers or whatever they do, or maybe tick bites, who knows?
Tick bites, yeah. So,
I'll just listen in. I'm going to only be on for a little bit.
Okay, we're going to tell folks who want to tune into the show to go to www.nissancommunications.com and watch live. You'll see a red column on the left-hand side. Click watch live, and that's the best way for you to get on and also get on the chat, okay? Christina?
Yep, my computer's too slow. That's why I'm on the phone.
Oh, your computer's on the blitz. Okay, so just stay with us. Okay, keep going, Jenny. You were introducing us not only to the fantastic history of Dr. Hahnemann in America, which was fabulous, because who knew that information about the statue, but also about selecting remedies and how to get started with that, and not being afraid or feel like you're being called cuckoo, or then you're just talking about potential antidotes using things like mints or camphor or things like that. It's a lot of homeopaths will say if you have the right on remedy, there's nothing that's going to antidote it from working.
I believe that too.
Okay.
But
you don't always hit
might
the.
not have the right on dosage.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's impressive that in Europe you can climb in dosage by 1 degree. So you will order a 30C, a 31C, or 34 or 39. I mean, potencies we don't even know about.
Uh-huh.
And the truth of it is that every time you change potency, it's almost like a slightly different remedy. So we talked about a case earlier of a dog bite, which I'll get to in just a minute. I did these alphabetically, and this is the way
Okay.
your sheet's going to look. So I thought I'll go through them alphabetically.
Cool.
So for aches, pains, bruises, and accidents, the first one I have down is aconite napellus. And that's monk's hood. And it's when you have rapid action of any sort. So it could be a rapid cold. You're talking to a person, and within an hour, suddenly your voice is hoarse, you're coughing, your nose is running, you have sounds in your ears, you're sick. That's so rapid. If you grab an aconite right then, you probably will just be over, through the whole thing in 10 minutes or something, because it's just, it's a perfect similium for that remedy. And similium means it matches perfectly. So it's also very important in accidents, car accidents. And that's really why I put this in here. In summertime, everybody's having little fender benders and things, and worse. I found it very important.
Poo-poo.
Oh, poo-poo, yes.
I don't want them. No, thank you. Okay. I think you're frozen again. Can you hear me? Okay, so she was talking about aconite, and I think I've lost all sound and video today. How we doing? She's going to log back in. I want anybody who's out there to guess the second remedy she's going to talk about for an emergency, quick onset, and for aches, bumps, bruises, and pains. Write it in the chat. What remedy will be next? It's the #1 remedy used probably around the planet homeopathically. Okay. You want me to just go ahead and say it? Okay. Well, okay, Amnon, you're asking. Dr. Sharma, do you know the answer to that question? Is he with us? Okay. The sound is very low.
About the car in the summertime. So this is a specific one.
A specific one? No, this is like the #1 remedy for bumps and bruises. You know, you think of kids playing outside sports, riding their bicycle, falling, just all kinds of things like that.
Great. I'm so glad you picked all that up.
Yeah. Were you able to hear us? Because I lost your... Yeah, I didn't tell them what the remedy is. I asked the folks out there to guess. What is the #1 remedy?
Oh, very good.
It's for trauma.
Yeah.
Yay! Amnon, please tell us what the answer is.
Arnica.
Arnica. You got it. And do you have a story, Jenny, about using arnica?
Oh, I have some wonderful arnica stories. Arnica is also looked at as sort of the homeopathic aspirin. Any trauma, just take arnica. It'll help. So, if you have a pacemaker and it's beating funny, you can take arnica, because arnica works on the muscle, and the heart is a muscle, and it will even help you feel better, and it's completely safe. But mostly we use arnicas for bumps and bruises and those small traumas. It's also very good for big trauma. I use it in a high potency after all surgeries. I like to, once the person is out of the hospital, treat with arnica and 2 other remedies I'll tell you about. But it's the one you could walk out today and buy it in a 30C. All of my clients carry higher potencies in arnica because I feel it's such an important remedy. But an arnica 30C would be great. Now I'll tell you some of so besides the bumps and the bruises and the little things like that, I told Debbie a story at the beginning that George Vitulkas, who's considered the father of modern homeopathy worldwide, told in one of his classes. And so it's in Greece, and the door is open, and the farmer next door walks in with a dead chicken. And he says, George, class is going on, mind you. George, do you want this chicken? It just died of it was frightened by the dog, and it died. And so he didn't want to be rude, so he said, thank you very much. And the farmer leaves. And George says to the class, there's about 200 people there, would anybody like this chicken? No, everybody's visitors. They're in hotels. They don't want the chicken. So he said, well, then we'll try an experiment. And he opens the chicken's mouth and drops an arnica in it, and he continues the class. After about 10 minutes, the chicken popped back to life. It, hadn't been dead very long, mind you, and it was more like a shock trauma for it. It popped back to life, jumped off the desk, and went back out.
I guess nobody got dinner.
Nobody got dinner that night. So that's one of the arnica stories. Another favorite arnica story I have was working with the dog, and Christine will like this one. It was a little tiny Jack Russell, and he was run over when he was 5 weeks old. The car backed over him, so every single bone was broken. He was all pinned together, and while he was pinned together, he developed epilepsy, and so I guess they gave him Dilantin. And so now this little dog is brought to me. He's 7 years old, and his problem is he's freezing. He freezes, his all motion freezes up, and so he's completely out of bandage for many years, but he's having a reaction to the Dilantin. So the veterinarian is putting the dog on a cortisone so that it can move and squat and lie down. But the dog can only handle a certain amount of cortisone and then has to come off the cortisone. And the minute the dog is off the cortisone, he freezes up again and can't move. So her debate was whether to put the dog to sleep or to just go on as they were, which was limping from one thing to another until the dog died. She just didn't know, and that's a dilemma. So I went back to the original accident. How did all this happen? It happened because it was a trauma. Well, the first remedy in trauma is arnica, and I wanted to go deep, and so I used a high potency, not knowing if the dog could take it. Who knows? Maybe he wouldn't even feel it. It'd be so high, so it goes over his head. So I gave the remedy, and 2 days later, I found out that the owner called me to say that he had started to improve immediately. He felt better. He was able to bark and eat and be frisky and not sickly. And within 2 days, he was much better. And that they had also just gotten a report back that he had developed other problems, internal problems, as a result of this cortisone Dilantin bit. And all those have been healed up too, some different problems. That was, I thought, pretty amazing because it was 7 years later.
Right. That is incredible. And we have a number of articles on Homeopathy World Community about concussions that were also potential. Most homeopaths will say to use the arnica for concussion, even if it's 25 years ago that a person had an injury. So for it to be 7 years, but this dog was really in a bad way.
Oh, terrible.
So do you have any comments, Dr. Sharma or Dr. Christina?
Well,
Yes.
I would love to have you send me the case, because we're trying to post every single animal case on different websites so there it can be seen.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, after the show, I'll get your address, or I'll
send it to you.
Go. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Healthy. Yeah. Okay. So are we up to another trauma remedy, or?
Now we're at Hypericum.
Okay.
So Hypericum is also, to me, a trauma remedy because Hypericum, I think most of your listeners will be familiar with St. John's wort. So St. John's wort is what Hypericum is, and it's used medicinally to calm the nerves. But when you use it as a homeopathic preparation, it actually helps heal the nerves. So what would that be like? Well, the classic one you always hear is if you hit your thumb with a hammer, and you know what's going to happen. The nail's going to turn black. You're going to lose the nail. You're in a lot of agony. And or if you slam your thumb into the car door. And the pain is just excruciating. It shoots like lightning through your body. It's insufferable. And it can be stopped, usually within a very short amount of time, by taking Hypericum. So one of my favorite Hypericum cases was a little boy who slammed, thank God for little boys, they bring up all the interesting accidents, slammed his finger in the car door and, was just walking around with it, wouldn't let anybody near him. And I gave him arnica, because that's what you always give in any trauma. I mean, that's sloppy homeopathy, but I do it. I gave him arnica, and then I gave him Hypericum. And an hour later, his mother said, "How is your thumb, dear?" And he went like this, "Fine."
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty impressed with that because that was the classic, give hypericum. But it's also, for instance, if you have surgery and you come out of surgery and you not only are aching and sore, but you turn a certain way and zing, you get a pain shoot through you. So take some arnica, take some hypericum, and you'll probably feel much, much better. Very short time, a few hours. And you don't keep taking it and taking it and taking it. It's another thing about dosing. We are the creators, homeopathy is the creators of less is more. So the less you take of a remedy, the more powerful it's going to act in your body. So we try and limit how many times we take it. But if it's pain or if your body is calling for it, you give the remedy, you repeat the remedy. So I do that for hypericum. Are there any questions out there?
Dr. Sharma or any of the guests who are in the chat today, we welcome for you to call in to 919-518-9773 or on Skype at Computers 2K Voice, or you can just put a comment in the chat section. It looks like Gabrielle Seelman in the chat said hypericum, she prescribed it for surgery on the foot. There was necrotic tissue that had been removed, including the nerves. The foot was completely numb. With hypericum, after 1 week, the feeling returned. So it is a nerve remedy. Fabulous.
I had a woman come into the pharmacy with repetitive sympathetic dystrophy. Is that correct? Well, what it is I was looking at something on the table.
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, keep going, Jenny. I didn't think he heard you.
Oh, okay. I was looking at the table, and I noticed her hand, and it had no.
Hello.
It was so swollen. It had no veins. It had no wrinkles. It had no. It was just completely puffed. And I thought, oh, I bet I could fix that. So I asked her. I said, would you like me to help you with your arm? There's something wrong. And she said, oh, sure. And I said, what happened? She said she'd broken a small bone in her hand, and the doctor had put her in a cast that was too tight. And she kept telling them it was too tight, but they said, oh, you'll get used to it, you'll get used to it. And finally, when they took it off, what happened was that the pain, had been too compressed. I don't understand the syndrome. I haven't ever studied it. But anyhow, so what she felt was from her shoulder to her fingertips, a shooting pain that went down and exploded her fingertips and then shot back up to the elbow and then shot back down to the finger. So that's what was going on 24/7. And she later told me that she had been standing outside the pharmacy in a discussion with her partner about amputation because she'd already lost 35 pounds. The doctors had done everything they could to stop the pain. There was no stopping it. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She was exhausted. Well, I didn't know any of that, of course, at the time, but I just knew, trauma, I give her arnica, and it's high potency because it was, a year and a half ago that it happened, and the shooting pain, I'll give hypericum, high potency, so that it matches, so the potencies match. I avoid mixing potencies. And so while she stood there, and it doesn't always work this way. You can't just always expect these miraculous 15-minute, different. But it often happens. While she stood there, about 50% of the pain went away. Enough so that we made an appointment for later, and I went and took care of her. She was always very grateful, and so was I, because that would have been awful if I'd missed that. So, hypericum, although it's great for thumbs, it also can, help in these major problems.
And I would imagine for people who have spinal issues as well. I think Dr. Sharma wanted to contribute something. Can you speak up?
Yes.
Okay.
Jenny, if we are talking about the arnica, this is really a great remedy of the trauma, I think. But we cannot forget about the rustox. Also, we cannot forget about the Spexelia. So when I am using the arnica is basically a vasodilator remedy. So it can dilate the vessels when the injuries become. So when the inflammation is occurred, the position is the red, then you can use the belladonna also, and belladonna give an immense result. it will cure, it will reduce the pain within a seconds if the patient is coming with a red bruises. So we can use the belladonna in the initial stage. Then we can follow with the arnica. That is a really good combination in any kind of injury.
I will try that. I've never done it that way, but I will try that.
Right.
I find
Yes.
that each homeopath works out their very own way of working, and that by us exchanging information like this, we learn so much from each other. So I will try belladonna when I see those symptoms match.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
Thank you.
You think about belladonna for pretty bad swelling and pain, very similar to apis. Okay, so we're just like going off on whatever is we want to talk about, which is the way I love to do a show. But you do have points that you do want to make if you wish
Yes.
to continue.
Yes, I do. So let's see, we were at, Ruta. So one of the things, just speaking of traumas, and thank you, Dr. Sharma, that was a wonderful piece of information for me to use. If the arnica seems to work a little bit and then stops, let's say you've got a sports sprain, and you get some relief from arnica, but there's still pain there, Ruta is another way to go. The Ruta is for tendons and tissues, and so, especially with sports injuries, this is an important one to know about. You had mentioned, Debbie, just a little bit earlier that hypericum you felt might be good for certain spinal problems.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. The ones that, as long as we have shooting pain, look for the hypericum. I meant to say that, and I just jumped off track, but back to Ruta. So again, in the injury world, Ruta is just very important as a, for sprains and strains and such things. If there are no questions, I'm going to go on to burns and skin irritation.
Okay.
So,
does anybody
apis
have a question about the Ruta? There was no. Okay.
So
Tennis
apis
elbow. I'm thinking if they're out playing tennis, that's what they're going to want.
Oh,
Something,
yes.
Yeah, something for the summertime, or maybe even baseball fans or something.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ruta's a lifesaver and on the spot too. So burns and skin irritation. Apis mellifica is a standard. It's made from the honeybee, and it's when we say made from the honeybee, one honeybee probably made 2 million doses. Less is more. So there's not honeybees being killed randomly for these remedies right now. That's not why we're losing our hives, folks. So Apis mellifica, you'll get a redness and itchiness. It's a standard bug bite. The two standards are Apis and ledum. And Apis is, if you've been bitten by a bee, but it also, you might use it for spider bite too. So it's just think little tiny creatures, summertime, biting you, and getting a sudden redness and swelling. And you feel better, this is important, with cool. So we have things called modalities, and some people have a very different reaction. They can have a bug bite, and instead they put scalding hot on it, and they feel much better. To the other person, they've got to put ice cubes on it, and they'll feel better. So we use that information. In this case, Apis is better with the hot, and ledum, which I'll speak a little bit later on when we get to bug bites, ledum is better with cold. So another important skin. Any question?
No questions. I do have a little comment. I tried something just yesterday. I was outside for a walk. Are you talking, or how's the sound going? She's okay? You're okay? You can hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. Yesterday I was out on a walk, and I did get a mosquito bite right on, or around my thumb, and I had read on the internet, it's not homeopathic, or maybe it is, I don't know, to take a hot spoon, and I dipped a spoon in boiling water, and just enough that I could bear it, I pressed it on the spot where that, and after a minute, the entire thing went down to nothing. And
It is homeopathic.
It
It's
is honey.
isopathic, actually. No, it's homeopathic.
Well, maybe you explain it. They were giving an explanation that it kills the toxin that is injected in it.
How interesting. I almost look at it a slightly different way. When I was a kid and I waitressed and was an artist, all the chefs knew that if they burned themselves,
Yes.
to quickly get back over the fire, and they would temper themselves down. So they would, they wouldn't go right back into the flame. They would go high up and come as close as they could. And in doing so, they never scarred.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to think, in a way, when you think of it, not as a bug bite, but a sudden
Inflammation.
redness,
There was the
right?
inflammation and a swelling.
Yeah, and then you think of a burn. It's also a sudden swelling, redness, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of similarities there.
Right,
So
and I was thinking, normally I would have reached for an ice cube to put on it, which would,
of course.
right? I would normally
Yes.
think to do that, but then the next day probably that bug bite would still be itching and feeling uncomfortable. Whereas
Sure.
after doing the hot spoon application, it just went away completely.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. I've heard about that too. I love collecting these. My
Yeah.
favorite collection of a cure of this nature is, do you know about cold wet socks?
Yeah, but I've never tried it.
Let's tell our listeners, in case you didn't know, when
Okay.
somebody, is suddenly sneezing and has a cough and, miserable and, lay them down, put a towel underneath them, and put a pair of cold, wet wool socks on them. The first thing you'll hear is the person going, oh.
Yeah.
Next, you put cotton socks over that and cover them with a blanket, and by morning they should be well. The body hates cold, wet feet. And when you put a cold, wet sock on the body, the immune system immediately wakes up. Whoa, problem over there.
Uh-huh.
And comes to life.
They got the fire engine rolling. Alarm, alarm. And the
Yes.
and the immune system wakes up.
Right.
So to stimulate and put heat into the feet to reduce the cold and the freezing. Well, I don't know. I'm going to have to see if that really works, because I normally will have telling the world that I have cold feet. And I do like to wear socks, but not usually
Right.
cold
Are you
ones.
confessing to silica?
I think I need another dose. Okay. Okay, so any comments from Dr. Sharma? If not, we'll move on to the next set of remedies. So specifically, Pam, who is in the chat there, told me she was really interested in learning about the bug bites and things like that, what to do for that, and allergies. And one that, did you mention silica? Oh, that's not for
later.
bug bite.
The sections I have we're in.
Oh, you have
burns and
put
skin
together bug
irritation.
bites and splinters.
Yeah, bug bites and splinters, then diarrhea, and vomiting.
Okay.
Most of the things the worst things that happen to you when you're on a holiday, right? So anyhow, we're back in the skin. We're dealing with the skin problems, and calendula officinalis, which you usually won't find in the health food stores. That's almost always in order, but it's just wonderful. You can use it on a sunburn. You can take a calendula pellet, drop it in a cup of distilled, preferably, or purified water. Stir it very vigorously with a clean spoon and splash it on a burn. Whether it's any kind of burn, if that's one of the remedies you have around. Debbie and I were talking earlier, and we both also use cantharis that way, although for some reason it's not advised. I haven't found out why. But anyhow, calendula officinalis can be taken orally, and that's how it acts the most powerfully. When you go into the homeopathic section of a store, you'll always see calendula ointments. I know it works beautifully on, the burns from radiation. It's a skin healer. And I also very much like it orally, and I go quite high. Like after surgery, I might also, besides the arnica and the hypericum, give a calendula 10 m, because that helps heal up the skin.
Wow. So that might be something that most people might not have on hand.
Right. I almost always have to get the place to order it for me or call it in, or what have you, go into my storage.
So did you tell the story about the child who had the burn?
Oh, that's right. So I usually in big burns, same as Debbie, use this Cantharis.
Right.
I didn't put that in here because it's actually not recommended. It's nice to know somebody else does it. It's just wonderful in burns. But usually, they recommend calendula. And a friend of mine who had been first a client and then a friend, she was, I guess, in her first year of learning about homeopathy. Her son was 4 years old, and his father had just poured a 16-ounce cup of tea, water. So still boiling hot. He loved it, scalding. And he turned his back, and the son reached up and poured the cup from his head to his toes, covered his face, covered his chest, covered his right down to his toes. And she, not knowing anything about homeopathy, whatever, they're going straight to the hospitals, threw a blanket around him. The husband jumped into the car. She grabbed her homeopathic kit. This was where I used to make my clients buy kits. Grabbed her kit, which had a little cheat sheet in it, and got into the car. And as he was driving crazily to Yale University, she started reading, and the third remedy down was calendula. And so the little boy is screaming his head off, of course. And she gave him calendula, and in just a few minutes, he calmed down. It was only a 200C. He calmed down, and by the time they got to the hospital, they took off the blanket. There was nothing. The doctor said, "We don't have to do anything. He's fine." And till this day, and he's now 13, he has a tiny hairline scar on his chest, and that's it. I mean, I was very impressed with that, but homeopathy never ceases to surprise me. So that was my big calendula story.
Yeah, you'll never forget it after that.
Yeah, no, these remedies,
they amaze us when they work, even though we know and expect them to work. We are truly amazed at the power of these minute potency doses and high potencies. So, okay.
And grateful.
Yes.
Let me say grateful.
Okay. What's
so
next
moving
up?
along.
Yeah.
Rus toxicodendron, which is made from poison oak. And this is really any number of 100 remedies could be a great poison ivy remedy. But the first one, if I want to do something really, really fast, or I don't have my books with me, which almost never happens, but I would give Rus toxicodendron. But I want to caution you, this is best to start low. Because when you take Rus tox, if you have poison ivy, it's going to bring out all of the bumps if you go too high. Because it's going to cure the body. It's going to send them out to the skin. See, the body has to choose, where do we let this thing fester? Should it fester on the kidney? No. Should it fester on the heart? No. Should it fester on the skin? Sure, it can fester on the skin. So the body is always throwing things to the exterior. That's why homeopaths love any sort of skin symptom, because it means there's an active immune system. The body's able to throw things out to the skin. But you do not want to have all of your 13 days worth of poison ivy bumps coming out on day one. Trust me, I've done it. Oh,
you don't. I mentioned in the last Health In show that it was my second case of poison ivy this summer alone. And I had been trying the Rus tox, but it was not exactly clearing it up. It was still infected or moving, more bumps coming out. But you know what I took? You're not going to believe this. And then somehow I read about it. I took a dose of causticum, and unbelievably, just like within an hour or so, all of the redness and the bumps started to disappear.
Well, causticum is great for burns.
Right. It is a burn remedy as well. That's
yes, and when you think about what happens with the kind of rash you had, was the more fiery, I would imagine, burning.
Well, it was just those oozing red bumps that comes from it. And I don't know where I had read it, but it did say skin prone to intertigo It is a skin remedy as well. So I think that took care of it,
Wonderful.
which is amazing.
Wonderful to hear that.
Okay, so
did somebody have a question?
Let me check in the chat. In the meantime, no, it doesn't see anything.
Good.
Okay. Did you want to mention about splinters? Because people walking along the boardwalk or touching
It's the next section.
Okay, cool.
Next section is bug bites and splinter.
Okay.
So the first one on that again is, we said Mellifica, Apis mellifica. The second one is Ledum palastra. And this is a wonderful, it's known as a tick bite remedy, and it works on Lyme very frequently. I personally had a double Lyme tick bite, which I did not get diagnosed. I was in the middle of a wonderful boating party, and my tummy was itching, and my tummy was itching. Finally, I looked, and I had two perfect bullseye itch formations, quite large, about 3 inches large. Now, one thing to know about Lyme tick bite is that means I was bitten 4 days earlier, because it takes that long to incubate. And so here were these huge, and all I had on me was a 200C. I knew that I wanted to go high because it had been in my body for 4 days, and there were probably millions or zillions of them. Who knew, They're very smart. They can sense the Lyme tick bacteria, can sense the, or virus, I'm sorry, can sense the presence of, is it virus? Must be bacteria, of antibiotic in the body and hide for 93 days in the tissues. Isn't that wild?
Really? They must, like going into hibernation or putting a protective capsule around itself or whatever it does. So the tick, and how long will it hide?
93 days. That's why when you talk about Lyme tick protocols with antibiotics, they're massively long, totally damage the stomach. You can't take that much antibiotic without knowing to take a probiotic, right? Anti against biotic life, pro for biotic life. You have to balance your killing spree there. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you destroy all the good bacteria in the intestines. People are sick afterwards. The intestines affects the brain. I mean, everything. So the immune system. So Ledum, I go very high with Lyme tick bite. If I were dealing with a child, I would go at least a 1M. My experience has been it needs to be that strong. And my own experience actually taught me this, because I took the 200C while I was in the water, we were heading back to shore immediately because I had 10M there. That's what I wanted, the high potency. So I took the 200C to just get something moving, and it felt like somebody was pulling a net off my body. I hadn't realized my whole body had been possessed by this bacteria, and it felt like it was somehow being pulled out of me. Well, it wasn't such a pleasant feeling. It wasn't as bad as a drug reaction, but you get spoiled with homeopathy. And when we got back on shore, I immediately took a 10M. And as is often the case, when you take remedies too quickly, one after the other, you can get a headache. So all the other bad feelings went away, and I felt the complete expulsion of the Lyme tick, but I was left with a little bit of a headache for an hour or so. You pay for everything,
Right. And you mentioned that, I don't have all of these high potency remedies available to me. So
I think I put it in the paper, but I can say it again here. You can get these high potencies, and I would say that even as a beginner, because of the Lyme tick possibility, to have a 1M and 10M on hand, I think is a lifesaver, because Lyme tick can kill. And and I know that down in the South they're fighting the idea that Lyme tick even exists. But it sure does.
Elaine Lewis we had on the show maybe a year or two ago, and I spoke with her, and she pulled out her back pocket of her jeans. She always had a container with her And she says, I never fail to have a 10M arnica with me on me at all times for any kind of emergency if somebody falls or anything. So
that's right. Every one of my friends know that if I'm suddenly struck with a heart attack, to first give me the 10M that's in my bag.
Okay.
And then call 911.
Okay.
Do you know,
Well,
I mean, isn't that terrible?
No,
But
you
I
get
said-
two people, so it can happen at one time. You know, somebody's caring for you and somebody's making the call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the best. Of course.
Yeah. So go ahead.
We just forget. We just forget about the heat stroke.
Yeah.
Medicines simulation. So you can you give any medicines for the heat stroke during the summer seasons?
I haven't had much to do with that. And before I speak, I would, of course, look in the book. I haven't had people come to me with heat stroke, but I'm sure I just looked up in the book. What would you say?
Yes, Dr.
Yes.
Sharma, what do you use?
Yes, I am basically using the Glow9.
Glow9, yeah.
Yes, this is a fantastic remedy I am using in the heat stroke, and I just give it 1 drop in 1 liter of water, and just advise to take 1 sip every 10 or 15 minutes, and this give a very wonderful results.
Dr. Sharma, would in America where pellets are more common, would that
Yes.
mean that the person would take a Glow9 30C, 200C, 1M? What would you recommend? Can you translate to
Yeah.
pellets?
Yes, I'm using the 30C
30.
potency only. Yes, and when I'm using mostly the 30C potency in the acute cases, I am just repeating very frequently, and in the chronic cases, I am just wait for the 30C potency, because I always explain to the home base that we have a faith on our pharmacies, because if our medicines are good, the quality is very good, then the every potency is working. If the symptom is matching with the remedy, then the lowest potency is even effect. So I'm using the 30, and many times I'm using only on the 200, not very much in the 1M or 10M. So in my
Well, that,
practice, I'm
again,
using 30 to 100.
yeah. The question I had was, and it's very interesting, when you're giving the liquid dose, is that a 1 LM?
No, I'm just giving the 1 drop in the 1 liter of water, and advised to take end of 10 or 15 minutes. And when we are giving in the regular doses, then we just give a 1 gram of pills in the number of 30 number of pillules, and take a 5 drop or 6 drops of the liquid medicine, and then prescribe the 1 or 2 pills 3 times in a day.
Right. Have you worked with the LMs?
Yes, I am working with the LMs also.
Oh, okay. Because for me, as a person trained in pellets, it was just confusing. But thank you so much for clarifying.
Okay.
Yes, I am also using LM, but if you can use a 30C potency with the dilution, because we have a law of dilution. So I just give a 1 drop of single 30C potency in 1 liter of water, and just repeat it. Then you will get a immense results. It's amazing.
Okay. Would you use a pellet, a 30C pellet, in a liter of water and shake it, or what would you do?
No, 1 drop.
We don't. I mean, it's
drop,
hard for us in
1
America to get the liquid doses.
Yes, and if you are using pills, then you can use the 1 or 2 pills of 30 number. That is enough.
Oh, just under the tongue then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that's for shock and heat prostration.
Right. So, and I wanted to mention that Kavitha Kukanur, she has mentioned, if I find it, aconite, belladonna, Glow9, and nature mure are the top 4 for heat stroke. And Dr. Kubushan has also confirmed nature mure and Glow9. And I want to make every effort to notify the listeners to these shows that these are totally educational programs. If you have an issue, you need to see your healthcare provider. We are not prescribing or diagnosing for anyone here. And so that is our disclaimer. Okay.
Good.
We really have gotten to 12 o'clock. Amnon, are we going to go another few minutes, or are we're going to go another few minutes and cover diarrhea as an emergency situation? You know, you could, if you have your food sitting out too long, it could go bad. You could get salmonella. You could have other listeria or other kinds of things going on when you're swimming in streams or waters that are tainted in some way. So diarrhea could be something, or if you're traveling. What are your top remedies for that?
Well, it stops most holidays cold.
Yes, it
so
does.
My two favorite remedies to carry in a kit would be arsenicum album and veratrum album. And here's the way you know when to do what. Arsenicum album is just vomiting or just diarrhea. Veratrum album will always be the two at once. That horrible situation, both happening simultaneously. And if you have that simultaneous vomiting and diarrhea, and you take veratrum album, you may have, again, one more bout each. You might need to repeat the remedy. You have to learn to listen to your body and judge. But usually one of the symptoms will go away, either the diarrhea or the vomiting. Wait a little bit, give yourself an hour, and then take an arsenicum album. You know, see if it calms down any farther. Don't just immediately jump on the arsenicum. The arsenicum album takes care of mainly a single issue, either vomiting or diarrhea. And you might also be feverish. So these are two very important travelers' remedies. An example of it was a friend went to Mexico, where they're going to have plenty of spicy food, and got off the plane with vomiting and diarrhea. We had her well and eating dinner in 4 hours. So you can't argue with that.
Yes.
I don't want to
so
take this over.
You're thinking about, you know, I usually think arsenicum is restless, anxious, wants small sips of water. Just using some of those keynotes is really, really helpful. Veratrum album being really pale, really weak, fatigued. You know,
Cold.
Those are really, really good to pay attention to. And we don't want to forget podophyllum.
Well, the podophyllum, I didn't include it because it might be confusing to people. Podophyllum, its distinction is that there's no fever.
Okay.
You have vomiting and no fever. Well, what would be an example of that? Gosh, I've never had an example of vomiting and no sickness, no food poisoning or fever or sweatiness or coldness. I've just never encountered it. And so, you know, for me, podophyllum wasn't critical.
Well, if you want to learn more about that remedy, which it last week, 2 weeks ago, we had Reithenberg, who talked all about podophyllin, is how she called it, which was a surprise to me, but that was a big remedy and a must-have in her traveler's kit.
Isn't that interesting? Well, I've done short shrift with it. To those of you who are new with homeopathy, we have over 3,000 remedies, and the fun part about being a homeopath is any one of those remedies could fix anyone's illness, because we're never fixing the illness, we're fixing the imbalance in the person. So any one of those remedies, if you have, diarrhea, doesn't have to be arsenicum album or podophyllum. But that's how, you can miss a remedy. So that's one of the remedies. Even though I've had lots of experience, I haven't had that experience. So now I have to read Judith's book to find out how she uses so much podophyllum.
And I really appreciate bringing in the philosophy and theory dosing in today's show. This is information that we don't always talk about, but it's good to know. Dr. Sharma, I want to thank you also so much for tuning in. And even though Dr. Christina Chambreau has had to hang up and leave, we appreciate that she also called in. So do you have any final words, Dr. Sharma?
Yes, we have many much more medicines in the summer for the summer, like Epicoc. We cannot forget about the China also, the weakness of the in the summers due to diarrhea. and due to the vital losses. So it is a wonderful show. And thanks, Jenny, for
Thank
such a
you.
nice information about the potencies and the drugs. And thanks, everyone. Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome. Jenny, how can people get in touch with you if they need you?
Well, I'm as I said, I'm retired, but I particularly like to help people with autism and cancer. So my number is 914-943-6242. And that's my only number, so don't call me at 4 unless
Right.
please.
Don't leave an unintelligible voice message.
Oh, I have to confess about my voice messages. I'm bad about answering them, but if you leave one, I will get there eventually.
Okay.
Now I feel guilty. I have to go check my
we do have such an epidemic of autism today, and the environment is our problem. The endocrine system is our problem. We have so many different things, but that is saved for another show. And actually, I'm trying to even remember, because I didn't prepare any PowerPoint for today's show. Quite unusual for me. I wanted to let you know that next week is June 9th. Dr. Bob, my better half, will be talking with us about glyphosate and illness, disease, things like kidney disease. He is a world expert in environmental science. On June 16th, we won't have a show, and on June 23rd, Neera Andahari from Pennsylvania will be talking about yoga as it complements your homeopathic practice for both the client and the practitioner. All the way up in July, we will have Dr. Sorev Aurora, who has the oddsapier.in website on evidence-based clinical cases in homeopathy. So we'll be very pleased to have him and find out something to learn about the true science of homeopathy. All those who have been in the chat today, we really, really appreciate having you join us. And don't forget, all these shows are archived on nissancommunications.com, both as an audio and a video. We are on Bamboozer and on Homeopathy World Community. And you can find both of us, or all of us, on Facebook too. So wishing everyone safe travel, safe summer, and lots of love. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Jenny.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. That VidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.